by the way, used to make beer brewed here. It is used to make the brew beer here in this refinery. Oh, Earth Rider, thanks for the Great Lakes. I wonder why it's
And that's just one of the 4 million moments from 2024 that we hope to share with you today on the Chris Plante Show. Well, welcome to New Year's Eve. Yes, it's New Year's Eve, the end of 2024, and in a few brief hours, we will usher in 2025. And I couldn't be more excited about it if I tried. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plante on the Chris Plante Show. Thanks for being here. Today is going to be fun. At least I believe it is. It's going to be a lot of fun. As we were preparing, Michael L. Piercy and I were preparing for today's show, we're going back and forth over all of our files, and there's just too much. We need like a 9-hour show. At one point, Michael said, I've got enough, but I'm only into April. And I'm looking at my list, too, which differs a little bit from Michael's, but we do have some similarities. And I'm thinking the same thing. So we're going to try and be a little judicious in our selections of the magic moments of the year. And you're also welcome to join us and make suggestions. 888-630-9625, of course, is the number, 888-630-9625. Jane is on the phones today, so be kind, as you always are. Be polite and be precise. And try and be specific. We have a lot of things that are queued up, teed up, and ready to go as we attempt to look back on just a remarkable year. I mean, everything you wanted was in this year, including a Donald Trump victory, a resounding electoral landslide, which I believe was... got to get the right attribution on this. Yeah, I think it was Kelly who said, it was the slimmest of landslides. It truly was. It was an electoral landslide with the slim majority in the popular vote, still a majority in the popular vote, a resounding victory. So we want to have fun today, but we also want to make sure we cover anything that's happening today. There's a lot of discussion about preparations for New Year's Eve, and it seems like the best news for New Year's Eve in places like Times Square is it's going to be raining like crazy. So the bad guys tend not to be able to do bad things when it's raining like crazy because they stay home. And I think that's excellent. And yes, I know it's already New Year's in places like New Zealand and Australia, but we're not in New Zealand or Australia. I'd like to be, but we're not. Many, many, many things on my list of topics today. They released the final plans for what's going to happen in honoring Jimmy Carter. And one of the things that struck me, this January 9th date that the Biden administration has assigned to the D.C. tribute to former President Carter, as Joe Biden signed an order that's shutting down the government on January 9th. So this is a government shutdown that they're all happy about. Kind of funny. Maybe. Yes, I think it is. It's really weird. Last week they were melting over the possibility there might be a government shutdown if we don't pass a continuing resolution. And then Joe Biden goes and writes an executive order shutting down the entire government. I wonder if anyone will miss a Social Security check or the military won't get paid because of this government shutdown. Will there be hand-wringing? We will see. There are stories that are in the current news today that are a little disturbing. A little bit disturbing to see that China hacked the Treasury Department. And doesn't make me happy to read that the Chinese government, because anything that comes out of China is the Chinese government, and they are our enemies, hacked into our Treasury Department. And there doesn't seem to be a gigantic statement on this. It was a few weeks ago, December 8th, a third-party software company called Beyond Trust. Beyond Trust. Interesting, right? Yes. How about that? Beyond Trust notified the Treasury Department that a hacker had gained a security key that allowed it to remotely gain access to certain Treasury workstations and documents on those workstations. The Treasury Department said it worked with the FBI and the intel community and some other investigators to determine the impact of the breach. They are claiming that the compromised service had been taken offline, and there's no evidence that the Chinese state actor still has access to the Treasury Department. Now, here's the thing. Written into that statement, it's really kind of an interesting take on this. This is the New York Times, of course. Anna Swanson reporting for the New York Times. Written into that statement is a little bit of cover. It's kind of like saying that the Chinese spy balloons that we shot down, remember the spy balloons that the Biden administration allowed to go completely over the country, over some air bases, over some sensitive spaces, and then they finally shot it down when it was over the ocean off South Carolina? And we were told, oh, well, they no longer present a threat. Well, yeah, if it's in the water, it's not presenting a threat. But what about all the information it vacuumed up and sent back home to China? It's the same thing about this hack of the Treasury Department. And it gained access, and it says there's plural here in the word workstations. Workstations and documents. And one assumes that if they are Treasury Department workstations, it's likely they're tied to the big mothership computers. And we don't know how much information was sucked out of those workstations and sent back across the internet back home to China. So this was December 8th. This is not good. Not good at all. And it's one of those things that I'm in the same position in terms of my take on who should be invited to the inauguration. I wish Donald Trump would immediately issue a rescinding of his invitation to the Chinese delegation to come to his inauguration. I think that's just a horrible idea. They are not our friends. They are plotting for our demise. And this is once again proof. The Treasury Department said, well, we can't clarify when the episode took place. We'll reveal more details in a forthcoming supplemental report to Congress. Thanks a lot. I can't wait for Congress to get back in session. And this is on the heels of another report of a separate breach of U.S. telecommunications systems by another Chinese hacking group nicknamed the Salt Typhoon. So you have the Treasury Department, the telecommunications business in the country, and hacking by China. It's not a good situation, and somebody needs to talk about it. But Joe Biden he's busy getting on Air Force One to fly home from his vacation, and then I guess he's going to prepare for his next vacation, which will be to Rome. So it's really kind of an insult to the American people not to be telling us as much as we deserve to know about this. It's a pretty big deal to me when the United States Treasury is hacked. There was some more interesting news as we are looking forward 20 days now from Donald Trump being sworn in as the 47th president of the United States. Interesting news out of the DOJ about one of the lawyers who prosecuted about 1,600 of the January 6th cases. One of the people that was part of the team going after more than 1,500 of the January 6th defendants is stepping down just before Donald Trump takes office. Matthew Graves, U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, will resign his position on January 16th. He announced it yesterday, and he has 1,572 defendants who were charged with crimes related to their presence at the Capitol on January 6th of 2021. I wonder what's going to happen to those cases. We'll see how this shakes out. More than 250 of the 1,500 plus that were charged under Graves were impacted by that Supreme Court ruling, Fisher v. U.S., which found the DOJ stretched the obstruction law, which was designed for financial crimes, and they used it to prosecute those defendants. So it appears that if these people aren't pardoned, there are probably a lot of these cases that are going to be getting a bounce the minute Donald Trump is in, and the minute we have Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, possibly in charge of the DOJ and the FBI. Let's see what happens. We'll see what happens there. As I said, there are so many clips that I want to play today as we look back on this year. There are probably clips that come to mind immediately. There are clips that you think of that you say, oh, I've heard that 1,000 times. I've heard, for example, the one that will forever haunt Joe Scarborough and his posse over at MSNBC.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
You almost want a laugh track playing underneath that. It almost feels like there needs to be a laugh track. And I have more from Morning Joe in my list of things we want to play today. And some of the things that came out of Mika Brzezinski's mouth, I can't believe she'll ever be allowed back in the presence of Donald Trump. They already had that bowing and scraping that happened at Mar-a-Lago after the election. But that Scarborough was March, like the first week of March. It was March 6th, he told us, that intellectually, and that was well ahead of the debate. That was well ahead of the couple of the other very public meltdowns that Joe Biden showed for us. We'll get to some of those. And, of course, your calls at 888-630-9625. Let's check in with Rob in Montgomery County. Hello, Rob. Happy New Year. Welcome to the Plant Show.
Thanks for taking my call. Happy New Year. Yeah, I said when Joe Biden, of course, first took office that this was going to be a permanent weekend at Bernie's on steroids. And anyway, all the rats will be running now, like this attorney you were talking about. The rats will be running, and I'm sure there'll be more pardons and whatnot. And then what was the other phrase? The futuristic pardons. It's like pardons into perpetuity.
I can't. Pardons for anything you might do in the future. It's a get out of hell free card.
Yeah, exactly. Like a new part of the Monopoly game. I was thinking it's going to be so interesting, and I can't wait. I pray that President Trump, one of the first things that he'll say in one of his news conferences would be, "You're fired." I want to hear him say that. I'll never forget when Obama was sitting at the table with John McCain and others, and he said, "Just remember, elections have consequences. Now you all get to sit at the back of the bus." But in this case, the American people have been sitting at the back of the bus.
That's right. And they're getting the upgrade. Rob, you're so right. And all throughout this campaign, we heard from Donald Trump, they're not after me, they're after you. And I'm just standing in the way. And we're going to highlight some of those memories. Thank you, Rob. Excellent stuff. It is the Chris Plant Show on New Year's Eve. Mike Opelka in for my buddy Chris Plant.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris.
It is the Chris Plant Show, New Year's Eve. Mike Opelka, that's me, sitting in for Chris Plant, trying to look back at the past 12 months. It was exactly a year ago tonight that Joe Biden appeared on the ABC television rocking New Year's Eve with Ryan Seacrest and the old Dick Clark show. But it was taped ahead of time. It was taped hours ahead of time, and it was so apparent. Can't believe they tried to pass it off as live, but we were told that everything about this president is live and sharp, and just he's all over it. And we'll get to some more of those clips. And, of course, your recollections from the past year and favorite moments. Sylvie's joining us from Waldorf, Maryland, one of the Real Housewives of the flagship station of the Chris Plant program here, WMAL in D.C. Hello, Sylvie. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Mike. Yes, Mike, you are a golf connoisseur, and, one of the most impactful moments of 2024, and a little seen segment of the Biden-Trump debate on June 27th. Towards the end of the debate, Biden says that he has a 6 handicap in golf, and if you look at Trump when he says that, President Trump's face just went to the side of the podium. He blurted out in laughter, and then he composed himself and looked straight at the podium again because it was just so laughable. It was one of those moments where you saw the true and instant, unscripted sense of humor of Donald Trump, which I'll never forget. And it was a great moment. I don't know if you recall that.
Oh, of course, because Donald Trump then immediately challenged him to a match and offered to give him 10 strokes aside because, Donald Trump is a competitor, and he really wanted to get Biden out there. And Mr. Trump is a really good golfer. So while I would have loved to have seen that happen, it never did. But, yeah, that was a great moment. Biden got caught in his own sauce on that one.
That is why Donald Trump is where he is right now in life, being the second president for the second time, because not only is he a great businessman and was a phenomenal president in his first term, but he is also a human being, unscripted, and has a sense of humor.
Yeah, and
so,
he could also...
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you, Sylvie. Happy New Year to you and yours. I think it's important that we remember every candidate had the opportunity to sit down with Joe Rogan, and Kamala would only do it if she could do it for an hour, and there would be no questions about marijuana. And Mr. Trump put no conditions on it. No conditions at all. He just showed up, had a 3-hour conversation, no notes, spoke straight from his brain. Joe Biden couldn't do that, and Kamala wouldn't, because she would have been exposed further. All right, it's Opelka in for Plant on the Chris Plant Show.
Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president, down to a 6. But by the way, I told you before, I'm happy to play golf if you carry your own bag. Think you can do it?
That's the biggest lie. That he's a 6 handicap of all.
I was an 8 handicap.
Yeah.
8.
Never.
But I have, how many?
I've seen you swing. I know you swing.
Such a great moment. Donald Trump and Joe Biden talking smack about golf, and Biden, when he says, but anyway, that he's either lost or lying. That was his tell. He came out and said he's a 6 handicap, and then immediately changed it to an 8. That's a 25% adjustment to the handicap, or a third if you look at it from the 6 to 8 point. But yeah, Biden, he's well known in the Wilmington, Delaware area where I live to being a liberal user of the foot wedge in golf. If you're not familiar with the foot wedge, it's cheating. It's when you kick your ball to a better position. It's Mike Opelka on the Chris Plant Show, and we are celebrating the end of the new year and really celebrating what's going to happen in 20 days with the return of Donald John Trump to the White House and the Trump cabinet and the Trump appointees to taking the wheel and directing this country back into a better situation, which we hope will happen. Yesterday, something happened in the world of social media. It appears that it looks like the Trump cabinet might be going a little radio silent on social media for a while. After the kerfuffle this week between Elon and Vivek Ramaswamy and the discussion over the H-1B visas and the distraction that it became, it appears that everybody's been told, get off social media and stay off social media until we get everybody in place. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that's kind of the way this is going. So let's not screw it up is basically what's happening here. All of the nominees have been told to shut it down, which is probably a good idea. Let us circle the wagons, if you will. Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff picked by Donald Trump, is apparently cracking the whip, quoting, "While this instruction has been delivered previously, I am reiterating that no member of the incoming administration or transition speaks for the United States or the president-elect himself." Close quote. That's from a memo that the New York Post has gotten its hands on. Accordingly, the memo continues, all intended nominees should refrain from public social media posts without prior approval of the incoming White House counsel. This is a good idea. The Democrats walk in lockstep on so many topics, and they're hard to kind of get any daylight between them and their party and their leadership. So they never get into these problems. So it's a good thing. So everybody just put down the phone for a week or two. Put down the social media. I know I'm not supposed to say stay off Truth Social, stay off X, stay off Instagram, stay off Facebook. But how interesting would it be if we actually vetted what we were doing ahead of time and we planned things? I know. Donald Trump works in a very improvisational fashion, but he's a little bit better at it than most human beings, pretty much every human being. All right, looking back at 2024, there were so many different angles we could take on this. There were people who were on the side of the Trump campaign. There were people who were totally against the Trump campaign, all making some really important and I think entertaining statements. And one of those happens to be a guy who had a show for about a minute. And that was Charles Barkley. And Charles Barkley and Gayle King, Oprah's buddy Gayle King, had a TV show. If you blinked, you missed it. It was on CNN in the middle of the week at like 7 o'clock or 7:30 at night. And they called it King Charles. You see what they did there? Gayle King, Charles Barkley. They tried to make it a little play on words for Charles Barkley. And I like Charles Barkley. I think he's very entertaining. I don't care about Gayle King. We kind of know why and how Gayle King got to the spot where she is on CBS News. She's Oprah's buddy. When you're Oprah's buddy, you get stuff. But Barkley and Gayle King gave us one memorable moment in this past year that I recall, and that was when Charles Barkley got upset because people were walking around wearing T-shirts with Donald Trump's mugshot on them. That's right. Remember that? Donald Trump got his mugshot and immediately turned out to be one of the most famous mugshots in all of history. And it was merchandised in about a second. And you could not swing a cat in any red state and not be able to purchase the Donald Trump mugshot T-shirt. And it bothered Charles Barkley. It bothered him to no end.
If I see a black person walking around with Trump mugshot, I'm going to punch him in the face.
Charles.
No, Gail.
Charles.
Gail.
You really can't say that.
Yes, Gail. Yes, he can. He's allowed. It's the First Amendment. It's a funny opinion. And that's one of the reasons why that show, in my opinion, failed. Because nobody cared about what Gayle King thinks. It really was true. That show was on and gone. And Charles Barkley, he'll never miss a meal because he's very entertaining when he does sports. But that's one of those moments from 2024 that I always look at and say, I wonder who was in charge of saying this was a good idea for a show at CNN. And then they actually paid to have it on television, and it did not last very long. For what not the reasons that Charles Barkley and Gayle King will tell you. One of the other moments that happened on CNN, happened on the mainstream media this week, related to Donald Trump and Mika Brzezinski. And Mika was mad that Donald Trump was posting on social media around Easter. And she didn't like the number of tweets that Donald Trump was posting on social media. Again, I go back to what I said earlier with Scarborough just attacking Trump throughout this entire campaign and Mika attacking Trump. How do they ever expect to get any sort of access to the president? Well, they've already gone down to Mar-a-Lago and done the bowing and scraping. But maybe we need to remind Donald Trump of some of these things, like the meltdown after Easter.
Donald Trump, who spent another religious holiday posting on Truth Social 77 times, sometimes unhinged, sometimes nonsensical, lots of all caps, definitely very mean on Easter.
So the old adage, again, I'm going to tell you, it applies here. When you point a finger at somebody, there's three pointing right back at you, Mika. So when you say stuff like
times, sometimes unhinged, sometimes nonsensical, lots of all caps.
Sometimes unhinged, sometimes nonsensical, lots of all caps. The meltdown continued.
The presumptive 2024 Republican nominee went after his perceived enemies all day. Among his many posts, one in all caps, blasting the, quote, evil and sick prosecutors looking to hold him accountable for his alleged crimes. He also shared two far-right news articles, one titled The Crucifixion of Donald Trump, and the other calling him a miracle, and the chosen one, sent by God. If you don't think this is a cult, you might want to consider opening your mind a little bit here.
Opening your mind. Yes, you might want to consider opening your mind, Mika, while we continue with your meltdown. It's the Mika meltdown. Yeah, she really can't handle it. I don't know how she's going to handle a Trump presidency again.
In another post, Trump claimed his Florida home and club is worth as much as $1.8 billion.
I think that's true, actually. I think we verified that actually is the reality, because the judge was trying to say it's worth about $18 million and that Trump overvalued it, which is what pretty much everybody does when they're trying to get a loan on a property or use it as an asset. Yes, I know, Mika, but you can finish your little meltdown.
And this one, highlighting a poll that claims he would defeat former First Lady Michelle Obama in a general election matchup.
She was beside herself at the thought of Donald Trump claiming that he would beat Michelle Obama in a matchup. That may be one of my favorite ones, that it bothered Mika Brzezinski so much that she had to use valuable on-air time. And boy, did she ever. We are, if you're just joining us here on the Chris Plant Show, it's Mike Opelka, and we are going through some of the great moments of the year. Some of them are just infuriating, silly moments of the year, and some of them are, I think, actionable moments. And we'll see what happens once things get started with the Trump administration. One of these, speaking of Michelle Obama, in there. One of these fun clips was from Michelle Obama. This is cut 6, Michael. This is Michelle Obama, and she wanted forced trickle down in America.
We have this trickle-down approach, right? Yeah. That's the basis of a capitalistic economy, right? But that's not happening.
Yes.
It's not trickling. Mm-hmm. The law would require in whatever way, if we're not trickling voluntarily, then we need to be forced to trickle. Mandatory trickling down.
Yeah.
Mandatory trickling down. The Obamas want forced trickling. And if you do have forced trickling, it's probably smart for you to see your doctor immediately, very soon. They have no idea what they're saying. The forced trickling, it's fun to watch the communists come out and tell us. Now, I just wonder how much trickling is coming out of the Obama treasure chest. Just how much money has trickled out of the Obama treasure chest and into the hands of the people who need it, the people around them. I don't think it's happened. I don't think it's happened ever. Not ever, ever. And did we ever get the real answer on the poor gentleman who died at the Obama compound up in Martha's Vineyard? Did we ever get the real story on that? And maybe that's another one of the reasons why we won't ever, thank God, see Michelle Obama running for office. I know there are people who believe that would be the answer. It's not. And Trump would have beaten her easily. I have a gigantic list of my favorite clips of the year. Again, some of them are fun. Some of them are infuriating. And we're trying to get to as many of them as possible and keeping our eyes on any other bits of news that may be bubbling under today. It's Opelka. I'm in for Chris Plant. You can join us too. 888-630-9625. 888-630-9625 on the Chris Plant Show. Welcome back to the Chris Plant Show. Happy New Year. It's New Year's Eve. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant as he's enjoying some much-deserved time off. And we are looking back on 2024 and some of the crazy, interesting, ridiculous things that were said on all sides of it. And I'm reading a story today about the conditions in Afghanistan. You know, since our withdrawal from Afghanistan, where we tragically lost 13 American service personnel, and God knows how many other soldiers were injured in the attack on Abbey Gate, and that horrible tragedy, that horrible day, but the aftermath of what was left there, because Joe Biden wanted to get out so he could have the photo op for 9/11. The aftermath and what's going on for Afghanistan isn't good either. The news today from The Independent says the Taliban, the people who are in control, have banned windows in residential buildings in Afghanistan now. They banned windows in residential buildings in Afghanistan because they don't want anyone to be able to see women if they're in the home. So buildings should not have windows that could look into a place where a woman could be sitting or standing. And this order applies to both new buildings as well as existing ones. This was just posted on a social media decree to let the women and the people of Afghanistan. So I guess you're going to have a whole new business of boarding up or covering windows. Yeah, the decree from one of the leaders states that new buildings should not have windows where you can see the courtyard, kitchen, neighbor's well, because you don't want anybody looking at your well, or other places used by women. Seeing women in kitchens and courtyards or collecting water from wells can lead to obscene acts. I think we all can agree on that. So people are going to have to construct a wall or block the view to avoid being a nuisance to the neighbors. Now, yeah, I think we all agree that it's kind of common courtesy to pull the shades down when you're walking around the house changing, but they're talking about just no windows ever. And Joe Biden has a great track record on women, doesn't he? I remember, I think this was February or March of this year when Joe was out speechifying.
Don't mess with the women of America unless you want to get the benefit.
Yes, don't mess with the women of America unless you want to get the benefit, which is what Joe was trying to get across there. The point, I'm guessing the Taliban probably is playing that nonstop. Joe Biden advising.
Don't mess with the women of America unless you want to get the benefit.
Yeah, it's crazy. And yet it took us until the debate in order for the Democrats to wake up and say, this guy can't be the president. It took us all the way until the debate for the Democrats to wake up. Yeah, I know. We even went through the State of the Union. Remember, he was all hopped up on something at the State of the Union?
January 6th lies about the 2020 election and the plots to steal the election posed a gravest threat to U.S. democracy since the Civil War.
And he kind of ran out of gas as he was trying to get through whatever was on the teleprompter. Yeah, they were all confident. He was the best Biden ever. That was the State of the Union. And then he went to Philly and was doing the crazy speech in Philly, and the whispering and all the other yelling showed up, and the wrong date popping up.
Last night in the U.S. Capitol, the same building where our freedoms came under assault on July the 6th.
Wait, July the 6th? I know people are saying, Mike, you're not being fair. They're both months that begin with a J. Yeah, he could have gone to June. He could have gone to January. He could have gone to July. He didn't. It's just amazing. There were so many clips, and we will try and get to as many of them as possible today. And you're welcome to make a suggestion as well. 888-630-9625, 888-630-9625. I've got some good ones from Donald Trump. Some golden oldies from 2024 from Donald John Trump. It's Mike Opelka wrapping up 2024 on the Chris Plant Show.